Hello, I am Adam Hunt. Welcome to the Education of, a new video podcast series in which I talk to different people about their educational experiences and how those experiences fed into who they have become as adults. The purpose of this podcast is to cultivate conversation about ways that public education supports or fails to support learners, and at the same time, we will also gain insight into how people educate themselves in order to create and meet goals in adulthood. It's going to be great. Thank you for joining. This week we'll be discussing the education of David Burchfield. His band, David Burchfield and the Fire Guild, just released their brilliant debut album, State to State, which I highly recommend, just like I highly recommend listening to this podcast episode. Thank you for stopping by, and welcome to the Education of. So, Dave, what have you been up to? You've got a new album. How's that shaken out for you? It's kind of hard time to release a new album, right?
Yeah, it's not what I was planning on at all.
Yeah.
It's been tricky, interesting. You know, there's more eyes on the internet now, so that's helpful, I guess, in some ways. But the plan was to tour 180 days this year, and
wow,
that's not happening, obviously. So
yeah, what were you gonna do? Yeah. Where were you gonna tour to? Were you just going to do the whole country, or did you have a circuit, or?
Yeah, last year we kind of like played a lot of areas, and this year I decided to try to get a little tighter. I'd like to be able to do the West Coast in both shoulder seasons, and like Texas sometime in the winter, and then like the South. Midwest and Southeast in the fall, and that was kind of like the goal.
Okay, well, you're getting get a lot of it.
yeah, it's a lot of the country.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing was deciding like Mid-Atlantic and Northeast is just so far for us to go, and didn't seem to make the most sense. So yeah.
When you guys are getting the chance, are you playing out a lot in Utah?
A fair amount. There's not really a small club scene here at all. There's like occasionally a local bill, but mostly it's touring acts and then bar gigs and restaurants and stuff like that. So there's plenty of work as far as that kind of thing goes, but not so much of an audience especially a young audience for like original music.
Yeah.
But that's all right. That's why I come to Colorado all the time.
Right on. Cool. So what was when did you start working on this album? Because when I was looking back through your YouTube stuff and just sort of doing a little bit of background research, it looked like you'd had some of the arrangements figured out for at least a year. You know, that arrangement for State to State is what appears on the album. How long have you been working on sort of the arrangements for the album and then doing the work for that?
Well, we tracked the album a year and a half ago, unbelievably.
Wow.
So I think a lot of people track and then it's like out as quickly as it can be. But I first was taking my time with finalizing mixes and then masters, and then kind of shopping, trying to see if I could get any interest in the industry to support the release. And then once I decided to do it on my own, then it was like last fall. It's like 6 or 9 months ago now, which in retrospect would have been a better time to do it. But at the time it seemed like, well, I don't want to compete with holidays, so we'll wait till the end of January. So that's like the release cycle. But some of these songs I've been playing for years, so good to have them out.
Yeah, cool. I guess because before I started digging into that, the only versions I'd heard were like just you and your acoustic, and obviously those those are gonna sound very different from full band. But I think that you made a good choice looking around for like making sure that you had the right mix and all that, because it sounds outstanding. Like, I am a pretty musically critical person, and I have nothing to pick at this. It's awesome. It's a great album.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know, if you were on a label right now, they might be kind of mad at you anyway, and not treat you very well because they can't get you out anywhere. Get you, it'd be a rough time to try and develop that relationship for sure. But
Yeah, totally. I don't know how anybody's doing that at this point. So, yeah.
Proving your work ethic and proving you're willing now. And I think that's going to like speak for you when you go hunting again. So whenever that is in the future.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the reason that I think initially we started talking about you maybe doing this podcast with me was because you used to be a teacher, right? Like for a short period of time. Yeah. And that's interesting to me. I have a lot of teacher friends who are musicians, but none of us have the guts to maybe step out and go a little more hard at our hobby. And you did that. So, like, how did you get into teaching? And then how did you make the decision that you wanted to turn back to the thing that, the creative love that you have?
Yeah. Well, I've done a lot of things, Adam, and I was in a doctoral program at CU Boulder in environmental studies, and I left that early with a master's, thinking that I needed to get away from research and closer to people-facing work, and I think that's going to remain true kind of forever going forward, that self-knowledge. But that led me into teaching. And I went through a cool kind of alternative training program through a school called Stanley British Primary School in Southeast Denver. I'm trying to remember the name of that school in Boulder. Like the Friends School or something.
Oh, yeah.
They have a training program as well that's sort of like a cousin to...
With Liz Barabay, I think, is in charge of that.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Okay.
So that it was kind of like that. So became a teacher, worked in Denver public schools for a couple of years. And as you and all the other teachers who may see this will know, it takes a while to get good at it.
Yeah.
And so finishing up my second year, I was starting to feel like I had like at least some understanding of how to plan a curricular arc and manage a classroom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I probably would have, I wonder if this is why, people stay in who might otherwise leave. Like you said, it's like, it's so hard, but so rewarding as you progress and become better at it. And I think if we'd stayed in Denver, I definitely would have taught another year, maybe would still be teaching. But my wife started her medical residency in Utah. So moving here, and I'd already been gigging a fair amount. I think when you and I met, I was still teaching. But when we moved here, that felt like a good time to just try something else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons for staying and a lot of reasons for going. So I don't know. I mean, I would say safety is part of it too, just knowing that I've got that gig of teaching and I've got the time in the summer and the holidays to work on my hobby. That's pretty rare in other work schemes too. So that would be my reason for continuing. I mean, I really love what I do, but I'm in year 11 and I still am like, am I getting it yet? Am I getting good yet? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, cool. So let's see here. So you did environmental science is what you were studying, you said?
Environmental studies is what they call it. It was really more like social science. And,
oh, cool.
I'm more prepared to analyze policy or run a public meeting than to measure the, I don't know, soil quality in your backyard.
It's pretty good, so don't worry, it's all right.
Okay.
What was your public school experience like? Was it good for you? Was it bad? Were you already making music then? I just kind of want to hear about how kind of all that combined and rolled up into who you are and where you ended up.
Mm-hmm. I grew up in Johnson County, Kansas, which is like the southwest of Kansas City.
Okay.
Just a suburb there. And it's like a pretty high earning area. We were pretty much right in the middle of the middle class, I think. But yeah, my parents actually moved out of Kansas City, Missouri, in kind of a younger, hipper neighborhood out to the suburbs, which was at that time when they moved to the very edge of the city because they couldn't afford private school and they wanted to, one of the better public school options in the area for us. So that's where we went. I think it was pretty traditional in a lot of ways, schooling of the 90s. But I was lucky enough to land and I think in retrospect, and I know there's a big conversation about this now, but at least it was beneficial to me to land in the gifted program, because that looked more like what a Friends school or Stanley British primary school or Montessori school environment might be. Is more like student driven, project based, more kind of open-ended type thinking stuff that was going on there.
Was that a hard conversion for you to make, to go from kind of regular school to that sort of more like interest driven, maybe like a little more on you as far as like what you were learning or what you were achieving?
I don't think so. I think I did really well there. It was like one day a week. That was the model we had.
Okay. Yeah.
Which was kind of weird. I don't know that it helped me socially with the other kids, but yeah, that was good. And then in high school, that just lets you like, basically bypass some of the more basic requirements and do them in your own time and that sort of thing. So,
yeah. Did you go straight to college after you graduated from high school then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went, and I'd started playing music when I was like 12. And was really passionate about it. And when I was like a sophomore, junior in high school, my hair was really long and I was like all about it. Had the bands going and it was fun.
Did you take lessons when you were young, or how did the musicianship start?
I'm mostly self-taught. I took a few lessons.
Yeah.
It would be like at critical junctures, after I'd played for a few months, I went and had a few lessons and that helped me like start playing lead stuff. And then in high school, I played in the jazz band. So I took, 6 months with a guy to kind of learn the jazz vocabulary.
Yeah. Right on.
Mostly self-taught. Yeah.
When you went in for those lessons, did you usually sort of direct the direction you wanted to go with your learning? Did you come in and be like, I want to play like, the guitar solo from Smashing Pumpkins, whatever, or like, I want to learn this strum pattern from like this Oasis song, or like, what were you doing? How was that working for you?
I think that's how it was. Yeah, it's funny. Like you nailed the time period references there, didn't you? Yeah, I think so. Certainly with the first guy, that was like I was super into Jimi Hendrix, and he happened to be in a Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan only cover band. That's all they played.
Nice.
So he was like the perfect match for me at that time to learn that stuff. But then, the jazz guy was more like I just didn't know anything about jazz guitar, so that was more like lead me.
Yeah.
So
that's a whole other world. Okay, cool. So how did you get into like Americana country stuff then? When did that happen?
That's like what I grew up on.
Yeah,
my dad was always playing Bonnie Raitt and Neil Young and Allman Brothers.
Yeah. So was it a result of your mellowing with age then? I'm giving you a hard time.
So.
You're not old.
No. Well, actually, my dad was never that into, like, say, Bob Dylan. But through an artist I liked, they were like, oh, I love this band I liked, said that Blood on the Tracks is one of the best albums of all time. So I went and got Blood on the Tracks, and then that kind of opened the door into like more like traditional folk, which wasn't so much my dad's thing. And that was like getting into Bob Dylan and then Woody Guthrie and then some of the like old blues guys, and then that led me to Hank Williams Sr. And that's I was sort of like trying to explore the basis of all the music that because I was doing all that, but I was also listening to Death Cab for Cutie, so it's like, and Wilco, Wilco's probably a better connection because that was kind of weird indie rock, but very rooted.
Yeah,
in the old
definitely
stuff,
a little more challenging when you try to sit down and play it than Death Cab is too.
Yeah.
At least in my experience. I'm not a huge Death Cab fan, but I am an emo kid, so former emo kid. So how do you set goals for yourself now as far as like making music or learning how to like do new things? Do you do that conscientiously, or are you like, oh, I don't really get this picking pattern, and then you just sit down and watch videos on it, or like do you not do that really, and you just sort of change whatever you're trying to do to match your current, like your own natural skill set? How do you go about learning?
What's most interesting to me as far as creating music is songwriting and arranging. So if you have good players, you don't have, I don't have to be a good drummer to convey to the drummer what I want.
Yeah.
And so, as far as like what's innately motivating to me most, it's just writing better songs. So actually I spend more time like studying the way other songwriters are doing their thing and then trying to emulate that, or reading more broadly, more generally about just creative writing. So that's like where I am more of a craftsman, I think, in that stuff. But then, I don't really play bluegrass music professionally, but that is kind of like it's more like the hobby side of my interest music. It's just like fun to go to a backyard party and play old songs,
Sure.
And so there is a little bit more of a technical side to flat pick solos. So, once a month I spend a week trying real hard to improve at that stuff, and I make little steps. I'd like to be more consistent, but it's not as innately motivating. It's just songwriting to me.
Yeah. When you're studying the songwriting, do you spend time like doing actual research, or do you kind of try to formulate those rules on your own to focus in on the parts of songwriting that you're specifically attuned to?
Yeah, I've read I think what I'll do more than study like formal stuff around songwriting is I'll listen really carefully to certain artists, one at a time, or listen to interviews, watch videos, listen to how they talk about their process, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I really like hearing them talk about it off the cuff, just because I think when it gets formalized, it's harder for me to hear the art in it quite so much. And I tend to be better at sort of sorting and forming rules on my own. So I learned really slowly, but I learned pretty well because I'm finding those systems in there myself. It's one of the things about being a teacher for me too, is I have a hard time following other people's lesson plans because I need to like find my own road through the thing that is being taught. I'm always interested to hear like if other people are really able to just sit down and just do those things that people are spelling out, or if they have to kind of explore it and find it on their own. When was the first song that you wrote where you were like, I can write a song. Like I'm a songwriter. I can do this thing. When did that happen for you?
I think I wrote my first song when I was like probably 13. So I'd only been playing for about a year. And then I think I wrote a lot. It was, I guess still is, but it was the place where I put a lot of that like adolescent angst.
Mm-hmm.
So I was writing quite a bit. And I think maybe at the time I thought, I'm a songwriter, these are good songs. But the older I get, the more I'm like, am I a songwriter yet?
um,
So,
do you have a hard time as your life seems to become like more and more under control as you get older and mature? Do you have a hard time like maintaining the sort of like I guess I'll use the word angst because you used already that emotional like connection, that angst to create music that is emotionally meaningful, or do you have to tap into that, or is it still waiting for you?
I think there's plenty there. But in the last, I don't know, 3 years, started trying to be more intentional about writing. And I think people will say this about my songs to me, but I've tried to write a little bit more hopefully, even if it is kind of examining angst or some kind of turmoil, just for my sake. Because if it's something I'm gonna like spend a lot of time with writing or playing for people, um, it's like tough for me to like write just really dark, to write and perform and be with something that dark all the time. So
Yeah.
so that's shifted my focus, and I think that's been good. I think like as like from a craft standpoint or perspective, the need to have some kind of inner turmoil to write is, it's just a lower craft maybe than being able to say something interesting about more places in life, more perspectives. So
Okay. All right. Interesting. I'm going to be thinking about that one for a while.
like
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, just like if you, it's like if you can only write one kind of story, then you may become a better story writer, let's say, by making yourself try to write lots of other kinds
Mm-hmm.
along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also less angsty than I used to be too. So
It happens. Yeah.
uh, fortunately, yeah.
You know, you buy a couch and all of a
Hmm.
sudden life
Yeah,
seems to be a little bit easier. Yeah, I get
yeah.
it. Yeah. Okay. Well, when do you think that we'll see you back here in Colorado again? I mean, let's pretend that let's pretend the outside world is functioning as it should, or as we'd love it to.
Yeah.
When do you think how often do you come back? How often do you like to play here? When will we see you again?
I was coming back every like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and now I'm not actively booking anything at all.
Yeah.
So things that come up here, I'm taking. Nothing's come up there. I don't think anything's really happening there.
Yeah.
A few things here and there, but it's not like I want to travel and
Yeah.
expose myself or others to risk for like,
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking I've seen a few outdoor things and I just didn't know if that was something that you were looking at. Um, are you doing online like live things with any regularity that people can tap into?
I was doing every Monday, and then I kind of stopped doing that. I think soon I'm going to begin doing Thursdays again on Instagram. That was that's a series I kind of stopped, but I might revive, which is more like this, but with songs, like interviewing songwriter friends, and we each play a few songs, and it's a good time. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. I'll definitely share the link from your YouTube when I put this up. Um, once we're done talking, I've got a friend in Nebraska who I'd like to hook you up with. I think you guys musically um, might be able to help each other out when you're going back and forth across the country, because
Cool.
you've got a lot of similarities, I think.
Where are they located?
Lincoln. He's on Sower Records there. I don't know if you've heard of Sower Records before, but it's pretty good, like Americana folk,
Cool.
like local deal there.
Cool.
All right. Well, I think I'm gonna let you go, but I really appreciate your time, and I hope that anybody who listens to this and is interested in music can take away some ideas or lessons and apply them to their own lives. And I hope teachers are hearing that gifted programs might have positive results, or at least giving kids like that student-driven, sort of interest-driven opportunities is good for us. So thank you, David.
Yeah. I did want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
If you want to get into this, or if you need to go, that's fine. But
no.
As we were coming into this conversation, I thought about how, because like leaving basically towards the end of high school and then going into college, I had adopted a pretty strong like perspective that I needed to pursue a more professional path. And I've wondered at times how much of that was coming from, the perspectives brought by my teachers and my schooling, that like that's what successful people do, is go to college,
Yeah.
And that drove me towards, like service oriented, public interest oriented degrees and work for a long time. And it took me a long time to like get to where I am now, and maybe I'm still not there yet, of like integrating those interests with this innate thing that's been a part of me at least since I was 12, which doesn't quite fit that track,
Yeah, especially like I'd say like there's a history with the genre that you're playing in for like social activism and things like that, but I feel like that has faded somewhat. And it's cool that you're, for those of you who are watching this when I release it and don't know what I'm talking about, he was donating 100% of his proceeds to the Southern Poverty Law Center. I just think that like that's something we really need to bring back. It's every year I've been like, oh, we need to teach, an activism in music or activism in poetry lesson plan, but we just never seem to find the time to get it into there. But it'd be great to see that stuff come back.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, good to make space for that, for like lots of ways of being and being successful for kids. I think probably especially in like affluent areas, like Boulder Valley
like
School
Boulder.
District.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate your input on that, and the time that you've given me today. And I appreciate your music, and I appreciate that you've gone out and done the thing you wanted to do instead of continuing to do what maybe you felt like you were expected to do.
Well, I'm still working on it.
Well, you are married. You have to do some of the things you're expected to do.
That's right.
All right, dude. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a good week and a good Independence Day tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks. You too, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, happy 4th.
Yep. See ya.